All right, let's get to further analysis and unpack some of the aspects of the budget speech by Finance Minister Tito Mboweni. And of course, we are joined by Treasury Director General Dondo Mogajane. Thank you very much and good afternoon to you, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you very much. And good afternoon to your viewers.
Yeah, well, I mean, like it's been a period of 24 hours where people had to sit back and digest the budget and look at various aspects. So in general, the budget has been lauded by many and frowned upon by some. Let's start with the positive aspect of the necessary burden of financing the rollout program for vaccinating the whole country. Surely the government had to prioritize that as it's forward looking towards getting the people to go back to work so that the economy can be back into action.
No, thank you very much. I think, look, that was a good thing. We had to make sure we provide for resources for the vaccination program. For it to start, we had to put money aside, 10 billion in the budget, another 12 billion that will address any other as a contingency and any other emergencies if they occur. So we've got enough provided for the vaccination program. The importance of the vaccination program is that it's going to kickstart the economy. We're going to go back to normal, because if we get herd immunity in control, then clearly, definitely, the economy will open up and economic activity we will certainly come back. And then much needed tax revenues are going to come, new jobs will be created, and then we'll get back to normal. Because currently, as you can imagine, we are not in a normal situation.
Surely not increasing taxes has been something that got a round of applause from many. But then, with hindsight, many people are asking themselves, with government not making money and not increasing the taxes, shouldn't there been a sympathetic approach for the government itself to have some form of income rather than have a fiscus that is actually relying on getting money from sin taxes and the tobacco industries, the likes of, the alcohol industry?
Look, we had to give a tax relief to especially the most affected low-income earners and middle-income earners. 2.2 billion rand is going to that category. We gave an example in terms of the new tax brackets. Many people, especially those that are not, and less, will get another 756 rand back per month in their pockets. You can imagine what that means in terms of the new tax bracket. So I think the reality is that there's good, positive spin-offs as to what exactly we came up with. Secondly, look, on one hand, we had to say, let's not increase taxes. Businesses, suffered under COVID. Businesses were impacted under COVID. So it's important that they have to come back to production. Jobs must be saved and jobs must be preserved at all costs. So I think at this point, the decision we took, as much as we need these taxes, the decision we took was to ease the pressure and also give an indication as a confidence-boosting measure that the CIT will relook at the CIT in 2022 with the possibility of revising it downwards in order for businesses, for more liquidity to come in and for businesses to flourish, so that jobs are created and people get employed. So that was one reason that we did what we had to do. Secondly, I mean, the revenue estimates that we penciled last year, there was a better performance, and we had to recognize that and take the money that was, even though we still 213 billion rand less from the estimates, we had to with the relief that we got, a little bit of relief, we made money available for something as important as the vaccination program. So the budget was a balancing act that we had to do, both sides and all sides. Yes, we went to sin taxes. Those who smoke, I don't smoke. Those who drink, I don't drink. Obviously, will suffer here and there. But it's important. It's important that the contribution that they are making, by the sacrifices, they must also look at it. There's also a health benefit. I'm not going to argue that or put a moral argument here. But we all know that we need the industry to blossom, the liquor industry. We support the industry. But however, we realized, we lost the excise duties and customs. Excise duties brings about 46 billion rand a year in revenues, an average of 47 billion rand. So yeah, we lost in the current financial year, 2021, by closing down. Almost 24 billion was lost in the system in the process. But it's important that people must see it as also their own contribution of paying a little bit more for a can of alcohol, 14 cents.
Yeah, well, we're talking about alcohol and smoking, and you don't touch any of that. You are quite an affordable visitor, I must say. And, when we talk about now pumping money into the construction industry, the infrastructure rollout program, 750 billion rand looks like a massive amount. But the government will have its systems blowing hot and cold when you have money allocated for bridges and all that, but then the culture of destruction, as the minister has already alluded to, when people go on service delivery protests, they get frustrated and destroy the very same infrastructure that you have budgeted for. Are we going to get progress in that regard, or is government going to have a different approach when it comes to addressing the needs of the people, of providing without any negative consequences?
Look, the Minister of Finance in the speech yesterday made a strong call to those who vandalize property and infrastructure, because this is counterproductive if you think about it. We spend money building some of these, but people destroy them to an extent that some people destroy clinics, they destroy schools, and it's unacceptable. And I think, firstly, we need to take care of these properties and make sure that we protect the citizens of South Africa. That's one. We are putting 756 billion, as you said, in infrastructure programs. It's critical that this money is spent. We did, if you recall, Colin, last year with the Infrastructure South Africa in the Presidency and DPWR, Public Works and Investment Infrastructure Department, and DBSA signed an agreement, agreement whereby we say we are setting up the infrastructure fund, which will ensure that we leverage on the money that government has laid out in order to ensure that private sector comes in, streamline the processes, make sure that the pipeline of project is there. The DBSA has got a project pipeline facility that they put up. It's important that we get that part right, because once we get the project pipeline right, then it becomes easy for investments to come through and for people and investors want to come in and participate and partner. Again, public-private partnerships become important, so that as government, we are saying to business out there, we've got 756. Let's partner and use it together and actually grow this number. And we are prepared to be innovative in the way we approach infrastructure more than ever before. It's important, and Dr. Ramokgopa is doing a good job in that infrastructure office, and he must be supported. And departments and business must support all the initiatives and that is trying to put together. We are fully behind that, and we obviously saying we call on those who've got brilliant ideas, Colin. Let them come, let's partner and let's talk and see how best we can build the much needed infrastructure, the bridges that you're talking about, renovation. And Minister did say that most of our infrastructure needs replacement or repair in one way or the other. So we have to get on a huge infrastructure drive that will have the potential to create jobs and boost the sectors that are critical for economy to move forward.
I had one of the reactions from political parties yesterday, Dr. Mboweni Ndlozi, saying from the EFF, he was saying that this budget does not speak to, comprehensive employment creation when you look at changing the structure of the South African economy and referring to industrialization, local manufacturing, and the way you are taxing, you seem to be excluding corporates like the mining sector and, like some of the audit firms. Why not also go for them when you're reducing corporate tax? Shouldn't you have actually gone for these corporates and these industries? Do you think he has a point?
Look, he has a point insofar as saying that there are structural issues that are impeding the economy to grow. And I think we have to take heed of that. There are certain barriers that need to be addressed. There are certain structural reforms that are critical to take our economy forward. And let's focus on those things that make this economy not to function. Let's agree what those things are and change them. Some of them date back as many, many decades ago. So we have to change them. The way we plan, for instance, look at the electricity infrastructure, the electricity sector. I mean, it's unacceptable in this day and age that we still have load shedding in South Africa. So how then do we approach that? How do you approach our whole IPP program? How do you approach our whole bill program in in the electricity space. So it's one critical area. How do you ensure that there's something called Operation Vulindlela, we spoke about it yesterday, whereby we're saying with Operation Vulindlela, let the barriers that are there be dealt with so that the economy can function. It's housed in the presidency and the National Treasury is coordinating this. And we think working to ensure that the rollout is escalated and these reforms are speeded up. That's key. And I think, Honorable Dozie was correct to say that there are certain impediments to the economy for it to grow. Now, insofar as other industries are concerned, remember when we look at corporate income tax, it will be for all, it will be for corporate South Africa, not necessarily individuals. But again, as you approach that, we have to look at the tax burden for South Africa. At that time, when you look at that, we have to look at PAT and see, are there opportunities to reduce further? Are there opportunities, for instance, to introduce wealth tax? This is something that the Davis Tax Committee obviously will help us understand and look at. There's an argument that says there are many wealthy people in South Africa, and we need to consider those and how best to tax them. So we are going to look at this all-inclusive, we're going to use an all-inclusive approach and using experts that we have on the ground in South Africa, including the Davis Tax Committee, to look at options and possibilities that are there for us to relook at our tax regime. So that's why we gave an indication now for 2022, and it will give us enough time, Colin, to work through that and what industries, what other sectors. Currently, we only focused on your normal fuel levy, and we also focus, as you said, sin taxes for now. But we'll have to obviously be innovative in the way of how we actually formulate and finalize our tax policy.
Well, Mr. Mogajane, just very briefly before we part ways, it is concerning for South Africa to have a ballooning debt. And the worrisome factor is how we're going to pay it back and where will the money come from when the country is on a financial or physical back foot. So with that scenario, I mean, like the target of 7 billion rand from the banks that the minister referred to, the IMF, African Development Bank, as well as the World Bank and the BRICS Bank, and also allocating 5 billion the first year and 1 billion rand for the subsequent years, one then would worry as to, will South Africa be able to afford to service its debt?
Look, currently we are servicing our debt. We have not defaulted. We are not about to default, because if we do that, then we can as well write off this country. But we are not. Many countries who defaulted collapsed, and they are now failed states. South Africa is nowhere near that, and I've said this before. So we have not defaulted. We are servicing our debt obligations properly, and we are managing our debt in the most effective way. I've got a team in the Treasury that looks at this, very efficient team of individuals and young South Africans who are really looking after this. So the $7 billion that you mentioned from the IMF and other international institutions, that was part of the financing framework for the current financial year. And that money is accounted for. And we've got terms that we've agreed on that will pay. And most of this money, as you said, by the way, it's very cheap money. We didn't raise it in a normal traditional market. The interests were very, very low. We said this today in Parliament again, and we explained this in detail in Parliament. So we are, in a way, ready to ensure that we don't default, and we are doing that. But what's critical is that we don't have to burden future generations. That's why we want the debt to come down. We are going to, just to stabilize, around last year in June, we said this debt is spiraling out of control. That's what we told South Africans. It was almost reaching 93% in 25-26. We're able now in this budget to reduce it to 88.9%. And it will go down. It will peak at 88.9. It has to go down in order for us to be able not to indebt future generations and be responsible. So it will be irresponsible to just borrow money to a point where we are not able to repay. Currently, we are managing, South Africans need not worry that, we are managing the debt repayment carefully. We know what has to be redeemed. We know what has to be collected. And that's why it's important that our framework is, we look at it like hawks. We sit on our framework and make sure that it doesn't become unsustainable. That's why we are very worried when this debt increases. We are very worried when the deficit exceeds. Deficit simply means we are spending more than what we can afford. So high deficit levels are worrying. But the key, Colin, and the key issue and the message is that let's grow the economy in order for us to stop borrowing. Let's grow the economy in order to create jobs. Let's grow the economy in order for tax revenues to come through.
Thank you very much for making time to speak to us, sir.